message that Kenyans can take from here is a redemption strategy. The only thing that can heal this country is redemption, forgiveness, reconciliation, restitution, and reparations. And above all, truth-telling and accountability that will bring about the word redemption, which is healing. So for now, those who want to have a better Kenya tomorrow, begin the journey now. 1 inch by inch, move together with your president. The nation will be a great nation. Thank you.
Wewe kama unataka kuingiana na mambo ya ufisadi, tutapigana na wewe. You can be my brother, you can be my sister, you can be my closest political ally, you can be whatever you are, but you are an enemy of the Republic of Kenya, and we will fight with you. Watu ambao wataendelea kucheza na mali ya umma, mali ya wananchi, wajue siku zao zimehesabiwa na ni shida watapata. Tumesema ya kwamba kutoka sasa hatutaki kusikia mtu akitetea mwenzake, ati mtu akiiba anasema ni kabila langu, ni dini yangu ambaye inadhulumiwa. Wewe uliiba peke yako, chukua msalaba yako peke yako. Tuungane ndio tuhakikishe ya kwamba tumemaliza hiyo vita na wananchi wamepata haki yao. Au ni namna gani wenzangu?
We cannot be a country anymore where those who work hard are robbed of their profit by those who are too lazy to invest and produce. And this is why I am and will continue the fight against corruption to ensure that the fruits of our labor fill every heart with thanksgiving, as indeed stated in our national anthem. I invite all Kenyans to join us, to continue working with us in this most noble effort.
Fellow Africans, I took this petition to the court in order to stop any future usage of falsehood and false documents, procured witnesses of the Waki Commission. I took this petition to the court 4 years ago in order to make sure that the Chief Prosecutor of International Criminal Court does not use this evidence anytime in the future, whether tomorrow or 10 years to come, to refer to this evidence because the evidence was fake. It is with this dismay and with this courage that I took to go to court in Kenya to seek a judicial review and to redeem the credibility of both those accused and the victims of this catastrophe that occurred in Kenya, that I decided to seek to expunge this report from the reports and the statute books of Kenya. It is unfortunate that the 3 judges in Kenya, whom I will name now, Judge Kanyi Kimondo, Judge Aburil, and Judge Onyengo, all of them sat down and gave very silly, flimsy, prudish, sardonic ruling against our petition. I want to tell the Kenyans that I have done my best. I want to be on record that should this thing reappear again, don't call me. Should it reappear again, don't say I never told you. Should the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court use this fake evidence again against Kenyans, don't say I did not tell you. My role was to go and remove these obnoxious toxins from the books of the Republic of Kenya. I therefore want to tell the world that my torrid road, a long road that I've taken in search for this envelope, has ended in Kenya so far. But I want to announce that Kenya is not the only state party in international law. Kenya is not the only state party. I will in the future, very soon, detail to you which other state party I'm going to seek this envelope to be expunged and to be made public to the people of the world. I want to thank you all. I want to tell you that a detailed document which is entitled My Long Road, Torrid Road to Work Envelope will be found on www.panafricanforumltd.com. You can read it, you can dissect, you can see the days, the long road, what I took, what I did, referenced, well documented, and may God help you that at one time somebody in Kenya will stand up to say thank you very much.
So thank you for making the time. I don't know how many people here in the room know or visited Africa, the continent, but I think it will be interesting to use this half an hour to really not only promote what the continent and what your respective countries have to offer, but also to explain why all these investors who are at the Future Investment Initiative should look at Africa.
What China has seen in Africa is opportunity. And they have matched that opportunity with an eagerness and a willingness on the part of new progressive governments on the African continent who are desirous for investment, job creation, growth in their economies, redeveloping broken down infrastructure. China saw an opportunity. It matched. Russia, they have decided also they want a piece of that action. Here we are in the age of the airplane and fast-moving ships, and yet the trade between Saudi Arabia and the Gulf in general is not even a quarter of the trade that existed between Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, and the East African region 200 years ago, when the only vessel available was the dhow. So what does this mean? It means that we are natural partners. It means that our trade existed well before even the colonial era period. These are the trade links that we need to reestablish, to realize that we are natural partners, to realize that the opportunities that exist for mutual prosperity in between our two regions are tremendous. We're telling the world, come, Africa is open for business. Africa's enemies are only those who see us in negative light.
Absolutely.
Africa wants to be a friend to all.
Absolutely.
And is open for business.
Absolutely.
We must give ourselves a different political template if we are truly to prosper and not be dragged down every single day by never-ending squabbles. Every so often, I believe, a nation must come together. We in Kenya have done so in Lancaster in the 1960s, leading to the Lancaster Consensus. We did so in the 80s, leading to the removal of Section 2A. We also did the same in 2008. And I believe it is time now also for a new consensus. And this is the aim and objective of the BBI process. In this process of renegotiation, no voice will be wrong, and all must be heard. The process must be inclusive, and it should spell, fellow Kenyans, an end of ethnic majoritarianism, and I believe an end to the winner-take-all politics. Fellow Kenyans, we are on a path, I believe, to end the cycle of election crises, and that is the only way we can win our battle of economic prosperity. And I want to assure all Kenyans, for me, I am not against any single person, but I am for 47 million Kenyans to take the next step forward.
Very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us today, the 2nd of March 2020, the first Monday in March, the year 2020. Thank you so much. I trust that you had a wonderful weekend. We did over here, and yesterday we had the Africa Showdown, and then we had a bit of a mishap. So in case you joined us yesterday and you were not able to complete the show, we had a bit of a technical hitch. We apologize for that, but we had so much lined up for you, and some of those topics we shall be looking at them throughout this week, so that we're able to really talk about and see what's really happening in Africa. Thank you so much, wherever you're watching us from, and I see from across the globe. Keep writing, and I shall be coming back and reading some of your comments as we get to interact and know what else is happening across the world. But as it is for the norm of the morning show, the first hour, we shall be looking at President Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy, when we also look at the news making headlines in the Kenya's front pages this morning, and also what else is trending in terms of news here in Kenya, and how is it connected perhaps with the rest of Africa. And then also, I've been doing a bit of public service, having the BBI copy. So if we have time, then I shall take us through a bit of that and understand what really is contained in this BBI report that is now perhaps threatening to divide this country in the middle. What is it that the politicians are saying that is not in the BBI, and how are they even saying it if there are things that they want articulated? And we saw what happened on the Saturday rally that was at Meru and the manner in which, Senator Murkomen, and also Gatundu, Member of Parliament, Moses Kuria, went there, and after giving a speech, they just stormed out. And so a lot is happening, and we have so much to talk about. And then later on the top of the hour, I shall be coming back with Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to look at news-making headlines across Africa in much detail. So right now, please, let's just go through the three leading newspapers here in Kenya, and we'll start with the Daily Nation. And we see that on the front pages, they revealed secrets of members of parliament Somali's trip. First of all, when I was just watching and listening to this news last night as a Kenyan, I don't know, I was bothered. I don't know if my worry is guaranteed, but let me just help us read through page 6 of the Daily Nation, see what's really happening, because 11 members of parliament from the northeastern part of Kenya went to talk to President Farmajo of Somalia, and Foreign Affairs Ministry was not aware. The government of Kenya was not aware. Apparently, they went to discuss the matters to do with Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group, but they did not think it was important to alert the authorities here in Kenya. So as a Kenyan, when I heard that, and we know how Al-Shabaab and the kind of mayhem they are causing in the northeastern part of the country, and sometimes there has been some claims that even residents there, the local residents there, they actually know these people. And I as a Kenyan, that didn't sit very well with me, but maybe I don't know what they talked about. So let's just go to page 6 of the Daily Nation and find out this very unorthodox trip that these leaders took to Somalia without the consent from the Kenyan government, nor the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who should be handling that matter. And also, you have to understand that Kenya right now are not in the best books with Somalia. Somalia took Kenya to the ICJ over the maritime dispute. Remember the 15 blocks that are shared between on the border. So the way Kenya wants to measure is not the same way Somalia is taking its measurements. So the disputed area is about 100,000 meters square there, kilometers square. And so it has been a tussle. So Kenya, even I think the case will start in June this year. So Kenya, we are not in the best footing with Somalia. So if you're going to meet the Somalia leader and your president does not even know, this is essentially somebody who they're not in the best books right now, so you better have some good explaining to do. So let's just understand why these leaders went to Somalia. And according to the Daily Nation, page 6, it says, a secret weekend visit to Somalia by 11 Kenya members of parliament at a time the two countries are locked in a diplomatic tiff has raised eyebrows in security circles. Upon their return yesterday, the legislators were held briefly for questioning at the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport before being released, with indications that they could face a parliamentary inquiry for leaving the country without official clearance. Now, 6 of the parliamentarians are from Mandera, 3 from Wajir, and 2 from Garissa, and they chartered a flight to Mogadishu on Saturday, where they had dinner with President Mohamed Farmajo. The agenda was not disclosed, although they traveled on diplomatic passports and were treated as state guests. See, that is where as a Kenyan, I need to understand. I really need to understand and to see even our security right now and what that could mean, because we really don't know the details of this meeting there in Somalia. I want to know what these members of parliament went to do in Somalia. As simple as that. And to see they use the diplomatic passports without the government, knowledge, and they were also received as state guests. You're not supposed to be received as state guest unless your government sent you in that capacity. So they were received as state guests, and they traveled using the diplomatic passports. All right. So I'll not even mention the names. It's such a long list there. But initial reports indicated that the members of parliament met with members of the Somali National Intelligence Agency, but one of the leaders who spoke to the nation denied this, addressing Secretary Muriithi Kangi, said the MPs would not be charged in court, at least for the time being. What was of concern to the country was how the MPs travelled to a foreign country without clearance and on a matter whose agenda was not clear to the government. And the incident occurred as Kenya and Somalia trade interference accusations. The nation has learned that Kenya is protesting what it calls Somalis' fabricated accusations of internal interference. So in a strongly worded protest note to Mogadishu, Nairobi says it supports Somali's peace bid but will not accept to be used to settle its neighbors' political games. So there's a leader that is wanted by Somalia who ran to Kenya and took asylum here. And Somalia has been really, I think we discussed this last week in another show. Somalia is not very happy about that. And so maybe, I don't know. So that tells you why this visit to Somalia at this point in time was just bad idea. And the authorities that are responsible must really get to the bottom of this. And also, on the front pages of the Daily Nations, doubts on plan to hold BBI rally in Eldoret. Team charged with leading campaign yet to set a date for meeting. That is page 4. Remember the BBI rallies that have been taking place across the country. So there was another one planned for Eldoret. And that is, the stronghold for Deputy President William Ruto, who's not, in support of this BBI, to be honest. I don't think it is something that, of course, he comes out and says he supports it, and then he pedals back. But we know that he's not really in support of this process. And so there was a rally that was being planned to take place at his home turf. The team that is supposed to be planning for this has not yet set a date, and so it's not very clear what will be happening in that BBI rally in Eldoret. Dahabo Abdi, what is not true? You're saying that is not true. They traveled to Somalia using diplomatic passports and they were received as state guests. Kenyan government had no knowledge of this. We should not get worried about our national security, and you're going to a government who your government already has a problem with, and you're a legislator, and you're going to discuss a matter that should be left. If they're saying that they want to discuss about Al-Shabaab, because Al-Shabaab anyway has really infiltrated the northeastern part of the country. That is where they plan, and and they find their way here in Nairobi or elsewhere in the country. So what is not true? Please help me understand there. Maybe something I said there that perhaps was not right, but please let me understand. But for the information we have, the Kenyan government did not know that the 11 MPs visited Somalia. They were not sent there, but they went as a state, guests. So we want to know what was the meeting was all about. And I had one of them mention it was about Al-Shabaab. You leave that to the Ministry of Defense. You leave that to the Foreign Affairs Ministry. That is not your job as a member of Parliament, especially when you're going to talk with another head of state, and you're saying they only met the president of Somalia. Yes, they only met the president of Somalia. What was the discussion all about? That is what we want to find out. And from yesterday's meeting and grilling at the airport, they were not able to give all the details. So we want to see. We want to know really what the meeting was all about. I think that would be good for this country. You can never take chances, And from where Kenya and Somalia is right now, I think that meeting, that is why it is being given the level of scrutiny right now, because we are not in the same page per se, because of the maritime dispute, and also because Somalia has been accusing Kenya of harboring. Remember that minister that was fired from Somaliland came to seek asylum here in Kenya, and President Farmajo has been wanting this person, I think, to face some charges. Is it the person I think that broke away from from prison there in Mogadishu. So the tensions have been there. So that is why this visit by these members of parliament from the northeastern part of the country to Somalia is raising a lot of eyebrows. And then they went to meet the president of Somalia. In what capacity? Why was that not communicated with the government of Kenya? Why were they traveling with their diplomatic passports? Why were they received as state guests, and yet the government of Kenya had no knowledge of this? Those are the questions that we must ask, and those are the questions that we must get answers for. And even because they met President Farmajo himself, even better. Now we really, really want to know. And on the front pages there, seclusion of travelers from Italy and South Korea, and travelers from Italy, South Korea, and Iran will also be required to self-quarantine for 14 days, a government task force has said. But why are we having them come here? Right now, they could wait. If they can't travel in another country, there's that ban. Then why do they have to come here and then self-quarantine? We cannot be too sure. And in South Korea, it is the second largest country that has had that in Asia after China. And why are we allowing people from South Korea? Why are we allowing people from places that we are suspecting, this virus has affected a good number of people? Why don't we just wait and see, and perhaps put a travel advisory for now, not a temporary one, until the situation is clear, and then we can allow people to come in the country. I think this story of self-quarantine, it's not auguring well with Kenyans, and so I don't know what. I hope that the government handles this matter really as it should. Okay, so there it is, the front pages. And also on the Star newspaper this morning, Raila gets free hand to Uhuru backyard. BBI meetings give former Prime Minister strategic opportunity to rebrand himself and build alliances. And now, this is very interesting, and I think is also playing into the belief by a lot of people that Raila Odinga is using this BBI rally and this BBI report and this BBI sensitizing process to earn some political mileage as he sets himself up for 2022. So with such a headline, you don't know what's really happening there. Raila gets free hand to Uhuru backyard. We saw the rally in Meru on Saturday. Of course, it was in Meru. That's used to be tough it is a tough Jubilee party, but there were not as many people who attended that rally as there have been in other areas across the country. So I don't know, was that enough to measure the temperature that now we see now the doubts of planning another BBI rally at Eldoret. So they are saying that the BBI meetings give former Prime Minister strategic opportunity to rebrand himself and build alliances. And that is on page 6 of the Star newspaper. And also secret visit by Kenyan MPs to Somalia gets them in trouble, as it should. And also, ex-warder says he can pinpoint Kimathi's grave for 25 million fee, Kenya shillings. 25 million? Come on now. And also, EACC to grill Korane over 233 million Kenya shillings World Bank cash, and 10 women killed since January, most by intimate partners. So we've seen a rise in domestic violence, and this is something that we must speak about here, not just in Kenya, but across Africa. It has not, you wake up in the morning and somebody has been stabbed, somebody has been poisoned, somebody has hanged themselves, and a lot of it comes from domestic violence, and times are tough. So people sometimes are unable to handle the pressures that life brings, and we see a lot of young people getting married very, very early nowadays. So they go there and they're not really prepared and to handle the seriousness and whatever else responsibility that comes with that. So sometimes when they get very overwhelmed, because we've seen a number of times is the younger people especially, but also domestic violence generally is really something that it should really has gotten our in the recent past. It has been something that has been reported, especially here, a lot of times, and I think it's time that people opened up and forget the shame and the stigma that comes with that, because what is the use sitting quiet, sometimes going into depression? You end up hurting yourself and the people that you love, and you end up taking your own life. So it's not going to be good for anybody. So people are being encouraged now. If you feel that you're in a bad relationship, it's not working, we'd rather just have you live there with your children than for people to come there with a coffin to put you in and bury you sometimes. And it's a very difficult decision to make, because usually there are other factors people have to consider. But domestic violence is something that we have to now start talking about and sensitizing people about, and saying it's okay to say, I tried, I got married, it didn't work, and I left. It's fine. It's there's nothing to be ashamed about than to stay there and somebody's being abusive. And what is really interesting is because when you long time ago, when you heard domestic violence, the connotation, people would automatically think you're referring to a woman who's being battered. But now we see even men go through that, and a huge number of them. And they were doing another survey. I think I was watching another documentary in some parts of this country where men they have the highest rate of alcoholism and drug abuse, and they're wondering what is the connection between this and that. And then some other survey on how they are as fathers, as husbands, and it was not really matching. So they use alcohol and drug abuse as an escape, and then later on go into depression, and before you know it, somebody is very violent, because men cannot come out and say I'm being abused at home. I think the society has this notions on what a man should be, what a woman should be. So a man, you cannot cry, a man, you cannot do this. But now things have changed, times are different. So let's create safe spaces where people can come out and speak their truth, and so that we're able to save a lot of lives and a lot of otherwise unfortunate things that comes with you continuing to stay in a situation that is not very, very good for you. All right. And so we on the front pages of the Standard newspaper, I'm paying 20,000 Kenya shillings monthly for 58 years for my dead baby. What is happening? So high medical costs are turning dreams of parenthood into an eternal debt trap. Read the moving stories of 3 Kenyans bankrupted by huge hospital bills in our fresh weekly pullout. That is very interesting. So she was pregnant, and then she lost the baby, and now the bill was too much, and she has to be paying 20,000 every month for the next 58 years. How much was that bill? And you already lost your baby. Come on now. Even this hospital, sometimes, I know they're in business, but sometimes you can adopt a human approach and see. So this person will be paying 20,000 shillings every month for 58 years, as if she's going to live that long, assuming. But still, 58 years, 20,000 every month. Sometimes you just write off some of these debts, just bad debts, and you just get rid of it. But hospitals here in Kenya, money first. They are here for business, so the humanity part there, which is quite ironical, because, that's what they do. That is the core of, healthcare. So we look at the scramble for Kenya, a fresh start. BBI presents the country's biggest political moment since 2010 referendum. We're on the cusp of a new Kenya, and this is how it is shaping. So we have the president, deputy president, ministers from among MPs and technocrats. Parliament. We shall have Senate, the upper house, and National Assembly, and regional governments, which we already have. 14 regional governments and 47 county governments. So these are just some of the things, like the regional governments. This is some of the things that is part of now the BBI. So should we go on with the referendum? So this will be adopted. if at all Kenyans, vote to adopt it, and we shall look at the BBI report just in a short bit, and then there will be introduction of the Prime Minister post and 2 deputy Prime Ministers, and of course that is something that has divided this country. Right in the middle, and still on the front pages, 11 MPs in trouble for talks with Somalia president, and the MPs from Wajir and Mandera counties flew to Mogadishu on Saturday for meeting with President Farmajo and intelligence chiefs that have alarmed Foreign Affairs Ministry, as well it should. Personally, I was watching this news with disbelief, understanding the history that exists between Kenya and Somalia and the recent frosty relationship. And then you're going to decide and go meet this president who your own president is at loggerheads with, and you're going to discuss a very, important matter like Al-Shabaab. We should be left to the security apparatus of this country, or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs are the ones who are supposed to be handling this. And so, Kenya work with Uganda, Tanzania in Corona War, so that is just what is on the front pages of the newspapers this morning. Thank you so much. Keep writing. We have just a few minutes to continue looking at what's making headlines here in Kenya, but also the BBI report. And I've been looking at section by section and seeing what's really happening, and how is President Uhuru Kenyatta faring, and how is he able to achieve some of these ambitious things. I remember his Big Four agenda that has been met with a few of challenges, and one of them especially being the implementation, because remember the CSs are supposed to be the ones who are helping in the implementation of the Big Four agenda. And from what we've been seeing, I don't know, but lately things have calmed down a little. But from last year, the whole of last year, 2019, Kenyans could tell that even the cabinet secretaries, the cabinet was divided into half. You could see they're taking alliances, others to the president and others to the vice president. It was very clear. And now these ministries are the ones who are supposed to help in implementing the Big Four agenda, which is manufacturing, affordable healthcare, agriculture, and what else? And something else I'm forgetting. So now, when you put people in place who are supposed to be implementing the very same thing and your vision, and then you realize they're actually the ones who could be working in sabotaging that, then President Uhuru Kenyatta found himself in a very difficult situation where he had to even fire some ministers. And of course, the number one challenge, the number one hindrance, the number one thing that really has threatened the implementation of this Big Four agenda is corruption. We have seen last year mega scandals that touches on very important sectors in this country. As I said there, one of the Big Four agendas for President Uhuru Kenyatta is universal healthcare. Last year we had a mega scandal here involving the National Insurance Healthcare Cover, that is the National Health Insurance Fund that Kenyans contribute every month, about $5, and you're able to get not comprehensive healthcare, but at least you're able to get some treatment for even, when you need it, the basic treatment, right? So Kenyans contribute this money, and then some few individuals in that, very important organization, they end up fleecing all the money, and Kenyans have to struggle when they go to hospitals. Sometimes you don't even get proper medication. There's not there, and so these are just some of the things. And we also saw food sufficient there. That is one of the food security is one of the very important, agendas that President Uhuru Kenyatta has. But now we've seen the level of corruption that has really engulfed, the Ministry of Agriculture. And last year we saw when Kinjuri was the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, they ordered maize from outside the country, and yet Kenyan farmers' maize were just rotting in the granaries. The government granaries had refused to to buy them. And the leaders who comes from these food basket areas in Kenya, their leaders there are the ones who are working with scrupulous traders from neighboring countries to bring in illegal maize, and yet the Kenyan farmers, who they're supposed to be fighting for, who they're supposed to make sure their interests are taken care of, the same leaders are the ones conniving to ensure that their people don't benefit. So it was quite an unfortunate situation here last year, and sometimes back the Ministry of Agriculture, that was earlier last year, so around June or July there, the Ministry of Agriculture also came out and said there's not enough maize in the granary. Maize is a staple food here in Kenya, so we use it to make a host of dishes. So it's the staple food here in Kenya, so it's very important for us to make sure that we have it in plenty and enough in the granary, so that Kenyans can feel safe. Once we have enough maize in the granary, we're good. All right, we can substitute with other traditional foods or otherwise. So farmers who worked tirelessly put all of their efforts in that. A lot of money goes to farming, and then you take your maize, it's not received. The people who are supposed to be getting your maize, they don't want to care about, because some maize was brought from Uganda, some maize was brought I don't know from what other part of the world, and farmers get to lose. So in the spirit, President Uhuru Kenyatta, of achieving your Big Four agenda, and I know last year we talked about it so much, but unless something is done to cushion Kenyans, unless something is done in form of subsidies, in form of some discounted fertilizers, in form of some discounted tractor services to help them in farming, unless something really is done to encourage these farmers to continue and to make sure that their produce will be the priority when it comes to the national granaries, their produce will be the priority. That will be the first that is received over there. Unless the president really takes such important and vital measures under, the CS of Agriculture, who he ended up changing anyway. I think it was inevitable, because the way that ministry was going, it appears, Mwangi Kiunjuri, who was the CS then, really was not really sure. I don't want to say clueless, but a lot of things happened under his tenure that really hurt the farmers of this country. All right, and there should be an encouragement for farmers to even continue or just go back to our traditional foods, which were there in plenty, which sometimes don't even require a lot of fertilizers or anything at all, so that we can even have a healthier nation. Because from what we see here today, you walk in these malls, you go to these restaurants, and the children are becoming obese because we've really gone out of our norm, and we eat otherwise the things that our forefathers were not feeding on. That's why that generation was much healthier than the generation we have today. So we have to encourage even indigenous African food to be planted, because indigenous African food are able to grow in the African weather, whether it's too hot or sometimes it's too rainy, but because it was meant for this continent. So either way, it shall do well, but sometimes I think by us wanting to keep up so much with the Western world, we seem to have lost our way, and now we struggle, and also the farmers who are still want to really farm and make a business out of it, we see them losing out because of a few corrupt individuals who work against their efforts, and instead of getting their produce, they instead go outside and get it from a neighboring country, which is just wrong. And to know that you are the leader who is supposed to be fighting for their rights, and you are the one who is conniving to deny them a livelihood, that is a shame. And I won't be surprised come next general election if I don't know what Kenyans look for in leadership, because if I was a farmer and I was affected like that, next time during the general elections, you come for my vote, you're not getting it at all, because you have proved to me that you really don't care about my interest. But unfortunately, that is not how we elect our leaders here. As long as you speak a language which I understand, Whether it resonates or not, I don't care. You're my person, I'm electing you. And that is where we get ourselves in a lot of trouble in this country. And until we break from from this prison of ethnicity, negative ethnicity, that really plays a huge part, even how we elect our people, then our leaders, and only then can Kenya really move forward. Because you've seen countries that are really where ethnicity is like the center stage. Look at a country like South Sudan. Look at where they are right now, and they're having some troubles already, and we shall look at that at the top of the hour. President Salva Kiir and Riek Machar are already not agreeing on how to divide the slots that are available there to their cronies and people. We shall talk about that at the top of the hour. Right now, though, I've been taking us through the BBI report, so I'll just do that very shortly. And let's go to presentation now. Representation in the electoral system. It is crucial that whatever form reforms to representation take, that they accord to the following principles if Kenyans are to be fairly and equally represented. You see, fairness and inequality is something that really is the message here in the BBI report. And the reason why I read sections of this BBI report, as I call it, I do a public service, because we've seen a lot of leaders go out there during these BBI rallies, those who are against, those who are for, and how they don't even talk about this BBI report. So this bothers me a lot. They're supposed to be going out there while they're drumming support for this report. Can they at least share exactly what is in this and how, and just leave Kenyans then to decide if they can't even explain, but just talk about the matters that are captured on this report. And they fail to do that. So that's why I've taken it upon myself to do a public service. So whoever because this BBI will be brought to us, if it goes through, we have to go through a referendum to decide whether we want it or not. So Kenyans, I think they should know what is in this BBI. So if you vote no, then you know why you're voting no. If you vote yes, then you know why you're voting yes. So now this is a public service for me. And so according to the BBI, that they accord to the following principles if Kenyans are to be fairly and equally represented. And this is very important because some communities in this country have felt they have not been fairly and equally represented, yes. And so this, I think, let's just read through what this entails, and then we shall talk more. So A, that the people's choice, as reflected in the election to their representatives, including in party primaries and nomination, shall be upheld through fair, free, and transparent elections. I think we already have that in our law. Why are we not implementing that? We already have that in our constitution, in our electoral laws. Why are we not implementing that? What now will change? Because it is in the BBI that will have us now implementing. And to be honest, a lot of these things are captured in Kenya's constitution. But where we find a problem is the implementation. That is where we have a huge problem with. And B, individuals included in any party list shall initially have undergone a process that uses transparent public participation in the counties even before any other vetting procedure is used. And C, that there shall be the equalization of representation and equality of citizenship as much as possible by ensuring that each Kenyan vote has the same status and power as envisaged in the Constitution. And also D, parties will be compelled through the Political Parties Act to be consistent with the Constitution to meet the gender rule and other constitutional measures of inclusion through their party list. This will equalize both genders in political terms rather than creating a parallel system that creates a sense of tokenism. All right, I think that like what we have now for the 46 47 women representatives we have. So according to the way Kenyan constitution is, the promulgated constitution in 2010, what happens? They created a special seat for a woman representative in every county. We have 47 counties here in Kenya. So every county you have a woman representative, and this was done in a bid. They're still also members. They are still members. They form part of members of parliament. And the reason this was done is because there has been a low number of women who actually participate in these electoral processes and win either the primaries of the parties or even at the whatever level now they decide to go forward. There are others who have really broken this glass ceiling, but it is still not a very fair playing ground when it comes to politics and women in this country. But having said that, I've always had a problem because I sometimes you watch these debates in Parliament, and some issues that are really, really quite pertinent or very important, and you would think from a woman's perspective, perhaps they will look at it differently or address it. Ever since, I've not seen, I don't know. So is it just a matter of having a lot of women in Parliament, increasing the number, or equalizing the men's number and the women's number in Parliament? Or are we looking at quality? What will that mean? What will that bring? What are they bringing to the table? That has always been my question. At this point, honestly, I don't know. I don't know if even the country needs that post. And I'm a woman, and I support women empowerment. But I don't know. They've not proved that this is a post that we should continue keeping. And I know a lot of women who perhaps are watching me out there might not be very happy because it has been seen as a tokenism. And what this draft now says is you're still at the mercy of men. Because a lot of our political parties, the top organ or the decision makers, majority of them are men. So they have to decide, let's choose this woman to go represent our party in this county and the other, and like that, all right, to go via there. And sometimes you find that women have to go an extra, I don't want to say an extra mile, but to do even things that are not appropriate for them to be for them to be given these nominations by their parties. So you feel that you owe somebody, or you go out of your way to please someone, or you go, it's not right. I want a situation where both men and women can go to the field together, can go campaign, and people can decide based on of course the agenda, but based on what are they bringing to the table, what is their agenda, what are some of the things that should I elect this man or this woman, how are they going to change my life, how does their message resonate with my own self, and the changes I might want from their representation. Instead, by struggling to have this gender parity, this gender rule, and what we have now, the gender rule, it says and there should not be more than 2/3 of one gender in Parliament. So as it is now, the Kenyan Parliament is illegally constituted. So should one Kenyan wake up today and go to the Supreme Court or to the High Court to challenge the composition of our Parliament today, it will be disbanded, because according to our Constitution, it has not met the requirement of the gender rule as is constituted in our own Constitution. And so because we still have so many men compared to women, so we don't meet that 2/3 gender rule there. And so all right, let's just see how that will work out. So party list of members of county assemblies shall follow the same principles and processes. And, of public participation elections and vetting of the National Assembly. This will ensure that people and parties can ensure that there is accountability in a different manner. I think our parties are still the same, so I don't know how they'll be planning to, how they'll achieve that. A lot of corruption goes on even in our party primaries here, and so that's where tokenism comes in. If you're not loyal to a fault, to your party leader or to your party, it does not matter how quality of a good leader you might have, they don't care. And so I don't know how they will ensure that. And so all the existing 290 constituencies will be saved, including the protected seats, because they have become key for representation of sparsely populated areas. All right, so in other words, they're not getting rid of the 47 women representatives and other nominations. Okay, so devolve political parties to have strong county and based party branches that will allow the people to have political forums. Do they not have county, offices in the different counties, these political parties? The last time I checked, I think they do. The bigger parties, but the smaller parties may find that as a challenge because they sometimes just focus on one region of the country where they feel they have a better chance of winning, so they don't really spread their wings across the country. But now they're being encouraged to have even to spread their wings in other parts of the country. But the bigger parties, NASA Coalition, Jubilee Party, they all have offices across the 47 counties of the Republic of Kenya, and they have the grassroots, elections there. So I don't think there is a problem, and we've seen that very active. And the nomination list through parties should be completed in a transparent process. Transparency and our electoral process here in the country, I think that is something that needs to be discussed. And it starts in the primaries. Like I mentioned there earlier, they'll only take somebody who they feel is loyal to the party and the leadership of the party. So if you're not, then I don't care how much good campaign you do. I don't care how much people loved you and voted for you. What will happen is the party is going to choose whoever they want to represent the party in that position, whether you like it or not. And we've seen that happen, and we see a lot of people come out and complain. Even the last, primaries we had here in 2017, it was ridiculous. We could see people going camping outside the party headquarters crying, and because they feel they've been cheated. They won, but the party felt, you know what, you might not represent our interests the way we want, so we are going to overlook your win anyway. The fact that people elected you does not matter, but we're going to get somebody who is loyal to the party, who will advance the party's ideas and interests as it should. So it's a lot. We cannot look at everything here, but in a nutshell, even as we look at this BBI report and what it entails, it's very important because the core reason why this BBI was formed after that handshake of President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga was because of the state of our country at that point in time. Kenya was going on a direction that was worrying the entire world, and so after the animosity that came after the 2017 election that were nullified and set precedents here in Africa, President Uhuru Kenyatta's his second term's first win was nullified, and then we went to an election. The first one was in August, another one in October. So after that, and even months leading to that, the campaigns, the atmosphere was charged, the hate, when these leaders get to a platform, sometimes they don't realize their words truly matter, because there are supporters out there who take everything they say very, very seriously. And our leaders sometimes just forget that. So they don't carry themselves with the decorum and the respect that should be coming, with the positions that they hold. So you find that Kenyans take these matters, seriously, and you see a lot of Kenyans starting to hate on each other, starting to feel you're not supposed to be, living closer to me because you speak a certain language. We don't get along like that. But before then, the rest of other years we've been cool. So that madness, which is quite unfortunate. But so this the BBI, the core of the BBI was trying to find out, why do Kenyans kill each other? Of course, the whole thing is anchored in our electoral process, to be honest with you. But outside of that, what other issues are underlying that are easy, to spark this hatred among Kenyans? Because you can disagree in mature democracies. You can disagree on it's okay. And the next thing you know, you can still go out and have coffee. You don't have to share the same political views, but not here. Politics here is a matter of life and death. And so President Uhuru Kenyatta, Raila Odinga came together, shook their hand in that famous handshake that took place in 2018, that has since caused ripples in this country, with a lot of players not agreeing, and it shook the political dynamics of this country. And they're wondering, okay, now is the opposition a leader coming into government now, or what now will define this relationship moving forward? But since that handshake, President Kenyatta and Mr. Raila Odinga, the opposition leader, they've stayed clear of politics, and they've said this BBI process is not a political process, and they don't want to connect it with the 2022 elections. They've refused, they're saying that is not why they formed the BBI. So they wanted to unite Kenyans, and they wanted to find a way that Kenyans can be more cohesive, and every Kenyan can feel represented by the government, despite of who is in power in this country, as it is in a lot of democracies out there. So that is what necessitated this BBI process. So it's a very important initiative. So when I see politicians taking it and politicking with it, I'm usually not very happy, because I'm lucky I can get the copy and read and understand it for myself. But there is a Kenyan out there who will be sitting in the evening and watching the television, or later in the afternoon watching those rallies these politicians are talking, and they're hoping that they will bring up the matters in the BBI, and they fail to do that. So they fail Kenyans because they don't speak about the things in the BBI. Instead, other things come up that has nothing to do with that. So even as they go to each region and receive all these points and opinion from the people from that region, can they also now go ahead and sensitize the public about what is in the BBI and why it is important, so that Kenyans, should they come to a point where now that we have to go to a referendum, then we shall understand what is it we are voting for or we are voting against, at least. But at this point, our politicians have failed Kenyans, and so that's why I find it very important for us to be looking just bits of it, of the BBI report here on Punchline Good Morning Show. But the core of this very important initiative was find a way of uniting Kenyans back to end negative ethnicity, and also to have a more cohesive Kenya, because when you have that, then a country for sure can move forward and can progress, and Kenyans can live anywhere, any part of this country, and not feel the need to move out every 5 years. That is unnecessary. That is very unnecessary. We are Kenyans, and we should remain Kenyans, and we should be loving and peaceful and law-abiding citizens, despite of where we are, where we're situated in this country. And we should be allowed a free movement, because it is constituted in our constitution. It's one of the basic human rights that you cannot deny, all right? So, but some Kenyans don't feel safe even staying in other parts of the country, because they feel a minority, they feel that they're not welcome, they feel that that is a totally different people they can't get along with, and that is just wrong. So this negative ethnicity has been the cancer that has been eating into our national fabric, that has to be addressed. And so we are hoping that perhaps this BBI team might find a solution for that. So I'm going to take a very short break. When I come back, I shall be coming back on the other side of the break with the diaspora dispatches and possibly another link. So make sure you follow me the other side so that we can look at the news making headlines across Africa this afternoon. But for now, it is about 2 minutes past noon here in Nairobi. Good afternoon.
peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.
Fellow Africans, since 1957, when Ghana gained independence, there has been quite a lot of political, social, economic indicators on the African continent that show that Africa has progressed from pre-independence Africa to post-independence Africa.
Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever. From now on, there is a new African in the world. That new African is ready to fight his own battle and show that after all, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs.
66 years down the road, Africa finds itself with the first country, Ghana, having gained independence. We find ourselves still locked up, controlled, manipulated, instructed, logistically supplied, equipped by foreign powers that dictate our agenda. Africa is endowed with plenty of minerals, resources, good weather. The climate is so favorable for the growth of food enough to sustain us. But we find ourselves in countries where hunger is killing people. Hunger is killing people because most of the people have taken to arms to fight wars, conflicts. Starvation has taken the place of development. In most African countries like Sudan, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Cameroon, Nigeria, in Biafra, and north of Nigeria there is Boko Haram, Somalia in the Horn of East Africa. We have taken to conflict instead of development. Development was the key indicator. When Kwame Nkrumah made the first speech that seek ye African political unity, economic development will come automatically, he was right. The events happening in Libya today vindicates Nkrumah, vindicates Nyerere, Sekou Toure, and NASA, the founding fathers of our Pan-Africanism. The events happening in Central African Republic, in Congo today, as the war of rebels ranges on between the rebel and the rebels and the government and the rebels, vindicates the founding fathers of this revolution. Our independence, therefore, was only on paper. Our independence, therefore, was only in symbols. Our independence also was in signs. Our independence also was in boundaries. That we received our flags, but we never received full independence as by the word independence. Most of the 3/4 of African countries, French-speaking countries, have their budgets being done in Paris. Is that independence? The Paris government or the French government does its budgets based on how much they will get from African countries. Is that independence? Is this the Africa that you want? Is it the Africa that we must look at? Is it the Africa that we shall leave for the future generation? If the answer to you is yes, then so be it. But if the answer is no, you agree with me that this is not Africa we want to live for the future generation. Our generations and the future generation need to find a legacy. What is the legacy that Africa and African Union will leave for the future generation? The wars ranging in Libya, in South Sudan, in Khartoum, in Mogadishu, in DRC Congo, in Amazonia, in Cameroon, Boko Haram, Mali, in Mauritania, the uprisings in Algeria, all point to one thing, that yes, we are not yet independent. We are still controlled by external forces. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for continuing to be with us and for joining me again for another edition of Diaspora Dispatches, where we get to look at the news making headlines across Africa and get into an in-depth conversation about some of the situations, especially when it comes to politics and the things that are happening in this continent that are urgent, that perhaps a lot of times do not receive the kind of attention they should, not just in Africa but outside as well. But here at Punchline Africa, we have a responsibility, and that is to serve the motherland. So we have a duty to make sure that we articulate some of these matters. At least we let the world know what is happening in some parts of this continent. So thank you so much. My name is Miriam Ogutu, and we have a lot in store for you right here. And so I'll just, as we normally do it, I'll just take us through the news-making headlines, and then we shall come back and now look at them, a few countries one by one. And we'll start with Guinea-Bissau, which I think is a country that I don't know if anybody's paying attention in what is happening in both Guinea and Guinea-Bissau. There seems to be a lot of unrest in the recent times, and I think I had some news if not every single day last week, but now also the new developments might set this country on a path to instability. But we hope it does not get there, and that the political leadership in that country gets a hold of itself and make sure that they steer back the country in the right direction. But that is the problem. The leadership is what lurks here in Africa. That is what we have. It's very scarce here. So just a few leaders here that you can really point out and say, this is a leader, this is a leader, this is a leader. A lot of leaders don't really possess that, and that is why it's very difficult even to find solution to very minute things. Instead, like what we saw happening in South Sudan, they will take us round and round and round and back and forth because the interest of the country was not really what was important. Is it was their interest, and if at all it was being taken care of, and that's what got them to the point that they were. But I'm happy the deadlock was broken. But now other problems seems to be crippling in, so we have a lot to talk about. So thank you so much. We start with Guinea-Bissau, and one of the two men who had been declared president of Guinea-Bissau has resigned. Remember last week on Thursday, Guinea-Bissau, there were already two men who were sworn in as the president. And just after one full day in office, despite not being in the December ballot, Cipriano Kasama was appointed by Parliament, the majority of whose deputies have refused to acknowledge the election victory of the former opposition leader Umaro Sissoco Embalo. And Mr. Embalo was sworn in as head of state at a luxury hotel on Thursday after the Electoral Commission had again declared him the winner of December's presidential vote. The ruling PAGC party is contesting that result in the Supreme Court, despite the resignation of one president. Guinea-Bissau still has two rival prime ministers. And we go to Guinea-Bissau, where we stay with Guinea-Bissau, and the military deployed at key state installations in the capital on Saturday as political crisis continues to bite in the small West African country. Two men, Umaro Sissoco Embalo and Cipriano Cassana, claimed the presidency after the inauguration of Umaro Sissoco Embalo, the winner of the contested December vote on Thursday, Guinea's parliament, where the party of Embalo's challenger Domingos Samoes Pereira holds a majority sway in Soprano Kasama. So you understand from this story now, the first story there I just went through there of Guinea-Bissau. So what is really happening? The Electoral Commission had come out and said, not the High Court, because the opposition went to challenge the presidential elections in the court. So the High Court there said, we have to hear this case and determine it in good time, because it appears there's a case here to be heard from the evidence that the opposition has presented us with. So therefore, any inauguration should not happen, any swearing in should not happen of the president who was said to have won until this case is heard and determined. So now the president, Mr. Embalo, is it Mr. Embalo? He decided that he will be sworn in on Thursday. And I remember last week he said, that was on the 27th, he said on the 27th on Thursday, he'll be sworn in whether that matter has been heard and determined by court or not. He'll go ahead. And now we see that he was actually sworn in a luxury, hotel. Which president is sworn in a luxurious hotel? You're sworn in a stadium somewhere with your supporters going there celebrating. That is what we see happening here in Africa. You take an oath of office in a public place where you don't have to look like you're hiding, because you have faith in that you are the legitimate president of the country that you have been elected. But now we see here Mr. Embalo, what he did, he went against the ruling, the order by the court itself. Remember, he is supposed to be the president. According to the elections, he won. But there are a lot of irregularities, and that election was marred with a lot of irregularities. And remember, President Jose Vaz, I don't know if you can remember, who kept pushing the elections date. So finally, Guinea-Bissau went to its election, and Mr. Vaz, I think, came at number 3. So this is number 1 and 2. So he decided to throw his weight to one of them, I think Mr. Mbol or something like that. So now, the opposition, the people who came in second, went out and challenged these results. And according to the court, there was a case there to be heard, and it was legitimate. So they said, for the sake of peace and prosperity and an open system here, what we shall do then is the swearing in must be halted first until this case goes through the whole way as required by the law of the land. Then after it has been heard and determined, and then now the president can be sworn in, or else, according to the findings of the court, a new date can be set if a proper, if the winner did not have a clear win, and the irregularities and other things, the malpractices that accompanied this election are found to be enough to nullify the whole thing. But I think also this comes at a wake of what happened in Mali, and I'm assuming this is what really jolted Mr. Imbalo into action, and he said, no, if I don't go ahead and get myself sworn in, then it might happen with like what happened for Peter Mutharika earlier was on 3rd of February last month, where the court had nullified the elections that happened last year. And now the elections were set now. According to the Malawian Electoral Commission, the elections are scheduled to be taking place on the 19th. Remember, on the 19th of May, last year's elections happened at 21st of May. So basically, roughly a year after the other elections happened. And, Mr. Peter Mutharika had gone ahead and was sworn in. If you've been watching this show, I've been questioning that manner of the way things happen in that country. And I was always asking myself, why did this president go ahead and take an oath of office. What does the constitution in Malawi say? When you already have a case in court that is petitioning and is challenging your win, your victory, then I think the proper thing to do, the best practice would be that you hold on fast and you don't get sworn in, and then the case is heard and determined, and then you can come back and get sworn in if you're cleared. If not, then you've not set the country in a path of civil war or civil unrest. But thank God that is not what happened in Malawi after the nullification. And you could see a lot of residents came out and they were dancing and they were having a good time after the nullification. So that tells you perhaps Mr. Mutharika did not have that much support that he thought he had. And so that really changed the tides there and the political dynamics there in Malawi. That is something that the president did not see coming. But now, the situation in Guinea, the court said, Mr. Imbalol, as much as you were announced the winner of last year's election, the opposition has come in and they have a case and they have evidence, and this is something very important for the sake of the democracy of this country that we look at and we determine. Then after that, if we find no wrongdoing or the malpractices are not as much that can amount to a nullification, you go ahead and and you'll be sworn in. But if we do, then we have to, perhaps nullify these elections or something as required per the constitution there of Guinea-Bissau. So the president-elect, for now, whose victory is being challenged in court, decided he couldn't wait any longer, and whatever court is saying, he didn't care. He went ahead and took his oath of office on Thursday at a luxury hotel. I don't know if it is the Attorney General of that country that swore him in, because it has to be. I don't know how that process is, but process is illegal. It goes against the constitution of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, that perhaps he raised his hand. I don't know if he's whatever kind of faith he comes from. I think you place your book of authority, your hand in the book of authority, whether you're Muslim or a Christian. You place your hand in the book of authority usually when you swear, when you're taking your oath of office, and then stands there and says he shall protect the constitution of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, because that has to be part of it. So if you take a swear that you're going to respect the constitution of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, and yet at this point in time, even that oath you're taking goes against the constitution of the country of Guinea-Bissau. So how do the Guineans there, how do they expect you to be the person who will spearhead upholding of the constitution if you are the one who has outrightly gone out and disregarded the constitution, disregarded the orders from the court, and you acted with impunity without caring the matters that surrounds this? Because this is enough to spark a civil war there in Guinea-Bissau if you are the one who cannot even uphold the law of the land, and yet you want to be the president. And how can you protect the constitution if you're the ones who is violating the constitution? And that is a crisis we find ourselves in Africa, because a lot of our leaders, they have no regard for the constitution, and that's why you see a lot of constitutional coups and amendments happening every now and then, because when somebody comes to power, they decide, I don't care what, I don't seem to like what I'm reading here. This does not seem to be working very well and serving my interest very right. So what now I'm going to do, I'm just going to change the whole thing so that it fits in line with my intentions and in line with my interests. So we've seen constitutional coups upon constitutional coups here in Africa. Mr. Conde of the other Guinea, also Conakry, tried that, and I think there was supposed to be elections happening yesterday, but that was called off, because also in his mind he thought that he can have both parliamentary elections yesterday together with a referendum to change the constitution. First of all, that is a recipe for disaster. That was just bad from the go. But also, the fact that he wanted to have a referendum, or he still wants to have a referendum to change the presidential terms, that is very unfair. And what makes this even very dire and very unfortunate is because Mr. Alpha Conde, the president of Guinea, whose term ends this year, is the first democratically elected president of Guinea. So you would expect He has a lot of legacy to keep. He's gone into the history books of that country as the first president who was elected democratically. Why does he want to spoil that? Why does he want to set Guinea on a path of war and instability? And that is the same thing I see happening in Guinea-Bissau, and the president going against the court order, and still the president-elect, not the president, because Jose Mario Vaz was out after the elections last year. So Mr. Imbalol, was president-elect, but the elections were challenged. So he was advised by the court, not even advised. The court gave orders that this case must be had and determined before any president, any oath of office is taken into account there. But in the usual, sometimes Africa fashion of disregard of the law by our leaders, he went ahead and got a very lovely hotel somewhere in the suburbs there and decided, you know what, I'm going to take the oath of office. And to protect what? Which constitution? If you're the one who is working with impunity, if you're the one who is violating the same constitution, and you're going to stand there and take an oath saying that you're going to protect. So what will happen then now? If the Electoral Commission nullifies your election, Mr. Imbalol, can you see that you'll raise up some tensions that could have been avoided? Should you have just been patient? Or why is he rushing? Why did he rush to take this oath? Because perhaps he knows that a lot of irregularities took place and he did not have a clear win or a legitimate win there in Guinea-Bissau. Anyway, let's just move to the next Guinea. I know we've talked about it, but protests have erupted over the weekend in Guinea's capital, Conakry, following President Alpha Conde's decision to postpone a referendum on changes of the constitution. The opposition says the changes would extend presidential term limits, allowing 81-year-old Conde to potentially govern for another 12 years. Guinea had delayed a constitutional referendum planned for Sunday because of concerns about the electoral roll. Alpha Conde has suggested publicly for the first time that he could run for a third term if the constitution is changed, a move likely to fuel further unrest. See? I'll not even get into it again, so let's just move forward. And we go to South Sudan, where the formation of a transitional government in South Sudan could be unduly delayed following disagreements over portfolio balance between President Salva Kiir and Vice President Riek Machar. Meetings in Juba on February 27th could not reach a compromise after Dr. Machar's Sudanese People's Liberation Movement in opposition complained that President Kiir's side has taken all the key ministries, but has been offering ministries to other signatories without consultations. President Kiir's side wants to retain the finance, petroleum, defense and interior, and also foreign affairs dockets. We go to Eritrea, where a United Nations investigator is condemning an Eritrean crackdown on fundamental freedoms and religious practices in a new report, as well as the country's harsh, indefinite military service and widespread abuse. Hopes that Eritrea, which has been accused of human rights abuses, would institute reforms after it signed a historic peace agreement with Ethiopia in 2018, not materialized. Now, a UN report on its human rights situation has found, of course, widespread human rights violations, including arbitrary arrest, enforced disappearance, sexual violence, and torture. That is Eritrea for you, and one day we shall cover this story about Eritrea. We'll find time and just talk about it. A lot of things are happening in that country that is not right at all. We go to Algeria, where a court in Algeria has ordered the release of a prominent human rights activist and key figure in a year-long protest movement demanding radical political change. Fodil Boumala was arrested in September 2019 and accused of undermining the country's territorial integrity, an offense punishable by up to 10 years in prison. The former state TV journalist was also accused of distributing publications that could undermine national interest, which carries a potential jail term of 12 months. Bumala was highly active in the Iraq protest movement, an unprecedented popular initiative which emerged in February last year, demand that President Abdulaziz Bouteflika abandon a bid for a fifth term in office. And I don't know what became of President Bouteflika, because remember, he had suffered a stroke in 2013, and so he was not even able to function properly, to carry out his functions as the president of Algeria, even for him to be insisting to go for a fifth term. And Nigerians said, no, first of all, you're this old, and plus you're incapacitated because of the stroke that you suffered, and also it's just immoral. You've been here long enough, 20 years. Whatever you're supposed to have done, you're supposed to have done it in 20 years. So we don't want you here. And Algerians went to the streets and intensified this protest until President Bouteflika resigned early in April last year, and then followed shortly by Omar al-Bashir. All right. So we've seen a lot of people going to jail there in Algeria, especially the ones who were, a part of the leadership of Abdulaziz Bouteflika there. And we saw a lot of arrests that were happening. And this is the key, a person who was organizing, the rallies and the protest that later led to the ousting of the president. There. So now the Human Rights Commission is asking for his release, and also the report is very damning there. We go to Nigeria, where Catholics bishops took to the streets on Sunday in Abuja to protest the serial killings of Nigerians by Boko Haram terrorists and kidnappers. The protesters, including members of the congregants, all dressed in black, defied the day's light showers and proceeded on a peaceful march from Economical Center to Our Lady Queen of Nigeria in Area 3, praying and seeking God's divine intervention. They said the protest was on behalf of the 50 million Catholics and over 100 million Christians in Nigeria. The president of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria, Archbishop Augustine Akubueze, who led the protesters, accused the federal government of being insensitive to the plights of the victims of insurgency. Akubueze said Nigerians were tired of the serial claims by the federal government that Boko Haram, which had continued to kill innocent Nigerians, had been technically defeated. Why is the government of Mr. Buhari still running away with this crazy line that Boko Haram has been technically defeated? Like, who even talks like that? So he warned that churches and mosques were not places to rain abuses on government, adding that preachers can pontificate and denounce bad governance, poverty, hardship, and insecurity. And of course, Vice President Yemi Osinbanjo, represented by the Minister of Transportation Rotimi Chibuke Amaichi, argued that Nigerians to pray for government in the present situation. I think Nigerians should just recall this whole leadership. I don't know what your constitution I don't know what your constitution states there in Nigeria, but here we can actually recall the leadership. We just need one person to go to court. We can, and we shall talk about that. So, and moving forward, an Nigerian anti-corruption advocacy group, Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, has opposed the bill for the creation of an agency for repentant Boko Haram members, which also provides sending them abroad for education. Excuse me? You're going to take ex-Boko Haram members and send them abroad for education. What is wrong with the education system in Nigeria? So the bill is currently at the Senate. In an open letter on Sunday by its Deputy Director Kolawole Oludare, SERAP, that is the Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, called upon the President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, not to allow the bill to sail through. SERAP said the bill proposing foreign education for repentant terrorists terrorists should be replaced with one that would ensure reparation for the victims of Boko Haram terrorists. All right. The group contended that the bill erodes justice and makes a mockery of the suffering of the victims and the unspeakable human tragedy, humanitarian crisis, and appalling atrocities committed by Boko Haram, a terrorist group. See now how Nigeria. Just when you think it cannot get worse. And we've been talking about this ridiculous bill that was introduced in the Senate sometimes back, I think now close to 2 weeks now. So apparently part of the package for the repentant Boko Haram was to provide them education by sending them abroad. Can you believe you're being rewarded for being a murderer? You're being rewarded for being a terrorist. You're being rewarded because this is a reward. So part of the bill, part of that bill, this was it. Let me just finish up with the rest of the news, then we shall come back and look at that ridiculousness from Nigeria. And we go to Zimbabwe, where police on Saturday besieged the home of St. Mary's lawmaker Job Sikhala and arrested several youths of the Movement for Democratic Change, MDC, led by Nelson Chamisa, following clashes with ZANU-PF activist Chitu Ngwinza. Now, the MDC said police arrested Stephen Sarkozy Chuma, the MDC National Youth Assembly spokesperson, while Sikhala, who is also MDC Deputy National Chairperson, was summoned to the police for no clear reason. Police said 11 MDC activists had been arrested for participating in unsanctioned demonstration and on public violence charges. The MDC said no amount of intimidation will cow the nation from sorrownessly expressing their displeasure at the illegitimate regime that has dismally failed to address the challenges facing the people. And then we go to Tanzania, where Tanzania's president is mulling a review of the grazing land, blocking livestock from crossing borders to feed, in a move that could see neighboring pastoral communities pay hefty fines whenever their herds breach the common border. One of the clauses in proposed amendments to the Grazing Land and Animal Feed Resources Act states that a person shall not move an animal into mainland Tanzania for the purposes of grazing or access of water. Violators of the new law will be liable to minimum fees of 20,000 Tanzania shillings, which is about $8.70 US dollars, yeah. And also, depending on the type of herd involved, cattle, donkeys, horses, water buffaloes, and cited in the more expensive category, goats, pigs, and such other animals in the other. This is Tanzania don't even have problems. Look at the things that really are bothering them. And we go to, and of course that is targeting Kenya, obviously. The Maasai community are the ones who travel across, just they are pastoralist communities. So sometimes they share the border with the Tanzania, and they go to the other side to graze and come back to Kenya. So that seems to be a very targeted bill there, and interesting. We go to some update from the East African community, and now the East African community could face a financial and operational crisis following the postponement of the Heads of State Summit for the second time in 90 days. Now, the East African Community's President Summit, which was initially scheduled for November 30th, 2019, and scheduled for February 29th, 2019, has been postponed yet again due to lack of quorum. In a 3-paragraph letter released last week, Secretary General Liberet Mfumu Keko said he had received a letter from the chairman of the EACC Council of Ministers, Olivier Gerehe, indicating that South Sudan was unable to attend both meetings. South Sudan, what is the problem? We needed to attend those meetings, and also we needed to pay for the fee that all the other countries pay there in South Sudan. In the East African community. So there is a news I heard here earlier before, and about Biafra. Let me see if I can get it here in a second. So apparently, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB Nnamdi Kanu, will lead 1 million pro-Biafran activists on a march for freedom, civil and political rights come June 2020. A circular by the group has revealed. Of course, Niger News reports that the circular said Kanu, who is currently on exile, and 1 million Biafrans will march for freedom, civil and political rights on Saturday, June 20th in Washington, D.C., United States of America. So that is the latest from across Africa this afternoon, 12:40 here in Nairobi. Glad that you could find time to be with me today. So we don't have much time. We have to go through all this news. I've talked about the Guineas. I will not even go back there. Alpha Conde needs to stop with the constitutional coup, and I will need to put back Guinea on the right path. He's retiring this year. Can he just retire and go? You're already 81 years old. Go get some retirement rest. And the other leaders in the other Guinea who swore himself against the constitution, and then he's supposed to come and be a president who has no regard for the constitution. That is the dilemma of where we find ourselves here in Africa. So now let's talk. We have this matter from South Sudan about the formation of the transitional government in South Sudan that could be unduly delayed following disagreements over portfolio between President Salva Kiir and Vice President Riek Machar. Now, meetings in Juba on February 27th could not reach a compromise after Dr. Machar's Sudanese People's Liberation Movement in opposition complained that President Kiir's side had not only taken all the key ministries, but has been offering ministries to other signatories without consultation. So here is the problem. And I think I asked this question even after these leaders of South Sudan signed that peace deal that saw eventually coming into the unity government. Unity government, they always must remember that. Unity government, and now they're just working on modalities and structures and how they can have everybody included. So President Salva Kiir is forgetting that this is a very special situation as it is right now and very delicate there in South Sudan. So as much as he feels that he's the president and he has the right to appoint, fire and hire certain individuals in that country, he should also try to understand the uniqueness of the situation in South Sudan. That does not take away his powers as the head of state. It's only that it calls for him to go out of his way when it comes to certain things, and he cannot act as perhaps other members, heads of state would, because this is a very special situation here in South Sudan. Having said that, these matters that are now being brought up by Mr. Machar's side are saying that Mr. President Salva Kiir is taking the key ministry portfolios and giving to his own party. He's the one who's having these appointments. And, like finance, like petroleum, which is such a huge deal because it is the bedrock of South Sudan's economy, and also defense and interior and foreign affairs docket. Those are very key, important ministries in any government, not just in South Sudan. So the presidents will always want to know that they are in control of these important ministries. But what does this say about this peace deal that was signed on Saturday? The fact that President Salva Kiir still decided to retain these important portfolios is because it goes to speak about the mistrust that still is present between these two leaders. They came together, yes. They signed the peace deal, yes. They're working on having a unity government, yes. But in the manner in which they are acting now goes to show that President Salva Kiir does not feel safe enough to give Mr. Machar's side these portfolios that are very important for this country. I'm not saying fishing and mining and others are not, but these are key when it comes to the running of a government, because these are very important portfolios as far as ministerial positions are concerned. So while they signed this peace deal a couple of days ago, and I said said, okay, fine, they have done that. I hope they will not be needing anybody to come now and start coercing them to do the right thing, because we know they were coerced to sign that peace deal. We know they were pushed to come together and to work together for the good of South Sudan. We know if the international community, especially the United States, and a bit of IGAD, who IGAD had come out and said, we don't even have funds to continue funding, this peace talk. So you either agree or not, and we've left the decision with you. So you decide. So basically, they threw the ball into President Salva Kiir's court and told him to decide. And he said he's going to consult with the people. So what President Salva Kiir did, when he left Kenya after the national prayers, the requiem for former President Dalit Rotich Arap Moi, I think a few of his supporters were organized to receive him at the Juba airport, and he gave a short speech there, and so that was the consultation he wanted. Very ridiculous, if you ask me. So later on, anyway, they signed the peace. He came with this surprise, announcement of taking the country back to 10 states, which was a huge compromise from his side, and also it came with a caveat of 3 more administrative areas. All right, we are together until that point. Okay, good. So now, my problem is, even after they signed that peace deal, I was hoping, because they were coerced to come together and work together the first time, that now it will not be upon the international community, or it will not be necessary for us to find mediators now to go back to South Sudan and start telling President Salva Kiir it is important. If you really mean to have a unity government in this country, for this country to stabilize and move forward, a compromise is part of it. And he compromised, and that's important. But even in the ministerial portfolios, I think he must make sure that it is distributed in a way that is seen to be bringing everybody in back. Everybody is included, even in the places that are very, very important, like the finance, petroleum, defense, interior, foreign affairs. Mr. Kiir has decided he will retain those dockets, and Mr. Machar is coming out and saying no. We need to have some of that. Matter of fact, if you can give us the petroleum and foreign affairs, that would be very good. I'm not sure that's what Riek Machar said, but he said no. We also, our people, our side also should have some of those important portfolios. But also, the issue that Machar is raising here is saying that apart from the key ministries being taken by Salva Kiir's side, there has been offering ministries to other signatories without consultations. So if this is true, then Salva Kiir, you're wrong. President Salva Kiir, you're wrong. I don't care what it is you have to do. You've already set this country to a good path of finding a lasting peace. Don't mess this up. South Sudanese are still seated somewhere in a refugee camp waiting to see your actions moving forward, if it will be encouraging for them to return back home, if it is safe for them to return back home. So if they're there and they hear news that now you're fighting about portfolios, now you're fighting about you're not working together, and there's no cohesion, there's no unity of purpose, and that is for the people of South Sudan, and then I don't know how you're going to inspire confidence in the people who already have seen very tough times for the last 6-7 years of their lives there in South Sudan. And so if it is true that you're offering ministerial positions to other key players in this, to other signatories, but you're not consulting with your main unity government partner, which is Riek Machar, then you're wrong on your side. You have to consult. That is part of it, out of respect and out of the revitalized peace process and out of the unity government you guys signed to and out of the peace process that you guys signed to. You have to have a mutual respect for each other if at all you want to work together. And I know President Salva Kiir, sometimes perhaps you feel I'm the head of state of South Sudan, so I don't really have to consult in some of these matters. But you have to understand, South Sudan finds itself in very unique position and situation. So you might not act exactly as other heads of state can, and your powers somehow, are curtailed to some level of to some extent. So you have to consult with these also important players, and especially with Riek Machar, because if you start bringing out issues like this, I don't think IGAD has time to now form a mediation team to come to Juba and try to tell you, okay, now this is how you're supposed to sort out these ministerial positions. This is how you're supposed. Now, we don't want that. We don't want that. Remember, the mediators came there over the state's matter, and it was a back and forth, and then finally you come out with a surprise to the world and you say you've compromised. The country is going back to 10 states. We don't want that to happen here. So nobody has time to come there and tell you how to run a government. If you cannot run a country, you cannot run a government. So, and you have to sit there and start arguing over things that has nothing to do with the people of South Sudan, then you can just leave office and let people who really want to serve the people of South Sudan to come and serve the people of South Sudan. And if people of South Sudan are your priority, then this should not even be an issue. But still, from what I gather from this story is that you people still don't trust each other at all, and I would understand where that would come from. But can you just put your personal interests aside and see what is the bigger picture here? What do you want to achieve? How do we, want to move this country forward? And then we shall not be hearing about discontent that now we see here that comes because of the key positions in government. So now can we talk about this march by Nnamdi Kanu has said he wants to have a 1 million march sometimes in June, and is saying that he will lead 1 million pro-Biafran activists on a march for freedom, civil and political rights in June, 20th of June. I think it will be on a Saturday in Washington, D.C., the United States of America. I don't know if this will be effective. I don't know how you feel about it, Biafrans, and if at all you're somewhere closer to Washington there, or somewhere in any of the states in America. Do you plan to be part of this rally? What would this mean to Biafran family? Is this something that will help let the world know and bring to the attention of the suffering of Biafrans to the rest of the world, who otherwise might not even have heard of what is happening over there? Is this the right move? And will this make any difference? If you're watching me out there and you are a Biafran, please let me know your thoughts. Mr. Nnamdi Kanu is organizing 1 million people march on June 20th there this year in Washington, D.C. The fact that it will be done in the U.S., I think is important, but also the fact that I don't know if he'll be able to achieve 100 million to have that number, but that is what he's looking for: 100 million people march to march against, civil to call for civil rights. Let me just read that so that I make sure I get my points very clear there. What Nnamdi Kanu said. He said 1 million pro-Biafran activists on a march for freedom, civil and political rights, and a circular of course was released, and Kanu is currently on exile, and 1 million Biafrans will march for freedom, civil and political rights on Saturday in Washington. That is on June 20th. I don't know what your thoughts are about this. Is it the right move? Should he come back to Nigeria and have that march there? Of course, we know he cannot come because Nigerian government has a warrant of arrest over his head, could not even attend his parents' burial, which is very unfortunate, but those are, I think, some of the sacrifices that people have to make. Now, you can understand when we were fighting for, or rather our forefathers were fighting for our freedom from the colonialists, perhaps the hell they had to go through for them to be granted, freedom and independence. Sometimes as the sacrifices are just too much, unless you really have it in you, or it's a calling, or it's something that is so important for you, then a lot of people are not able to go through with the whole thing because, it's very difficult. So anyway, so Catholic bishops in Nigeria has been speaking. Last week, I think I read two news in regards to that, and we had this conversation. So on yesterday, I think after the service, they mobilized their congregants and they took to the streets of Abuja. And they were very clear. In fact, one of the statements that the Catholic Church bishops gave out last week, they were very clear, and they said, President Muhammadu Buhari, we have seen your lack of commitment towards ending the suffering that is being caused by Boko Haram and the Fulani terrorists. Like, they did not mince their words. And they said this targeted terrorism towards Christians has to stop. You must get a grip of this country's security. So yesterday, they did not just give an empty talk. So yesterday, they took their congregants and they organized a protest over the serial killings of Nigerians by Boko Haram terrorists and kidnappers. And the protesters, including members of their congregants, of the congregation, all dressed in black, defied the day's light showers and proceeded on a peaceful march from somewhere in Nigeria, in Area 3 in Abuja, and praying and seeking God's intervention. And they said the protest was on behalf of over 50 million Catholics and over 100 million Christians in Nigeria who are seen to be the ones being persecuted. So Akubweze, who is the president of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria, said Nigerians were tired of the serial claims by the federal government that Boko Haram, which had continued to kill innocent Nigerians, had been technically defeated. And this has been a very lame line that President Buhari has been running with. Earlier this year, he said, I am shocked that Boko Haram is running mayhem in this country. I thought we defeated them. Because according to him, last year he gave a statement that he said Boko Haram was technically defeated. And I wondered, does this president actually reside in Nigeria? And if not, does he watch any news that comes from that country? Because I'm over here in East Africa, and what I hear, what I read, what I see coming from that part of the world worry me in this other part of the world. Because I'm feeling if Boko Haram is not brought under control, it will spill over and the whole continent will be affected. For now, it has affected outside of Nigeria, another 5-6 countries in the Sahel region. So this is a very grave matter that we must keep speaking of. And I told you, now that that peace deal has been signed in South Sudan, now we have to start talking about this Boko Haram mayhem. And we have to bring this to the attention of the world and also to the government of Nigeria, who, as it appears, is completely out of touch, like I usually say here. Now you see President Buhari insisting on that Boko Haram was technically defeated. What do you mean Boko Haram was technically defeated? Well, Boko Haram is running amok of that country. It's killing innocent lives. It's maiming people. It has taken over a whole section of a whole state there in Nigeria. It has taken over a whole highway. You can't even cross going over or coming back. And remember, for the people who had traveled during the December festivities, there are others who have not even managed to come back because Boko Haram has taken over a whole highway. You cannot come back. Yeah? And the government is not aware. So now what is more ridiculous about this whole thing that really makes me want to gag, even just reading about it, is because the anti-corruption advocacy group Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project has opposed the bill for the creation of an agency of repentant Boko Haram members. Remember that bill that we've been talking about here that was presented in the Senate that said the government needs to rehabilitate ex-Boko Haram fighters. So apparently, part of the rehabilitation was to get them education abroad, out of the country. What is wrong with the education system in Nigeria? Where do they want to send these people? Which abroad is this that they want to send these ex-Boko Haram fighters? Are they sending them to other areas where they can get proper terrorism training? Or where are they sending them? To study abroad? Nigeria has no education, has no learning institutions. They cannot go to schools in Nigeria. They must be taken abroad. Why? What is happening there? And by you taking them abroad to study, are you rewarding bad behavior? Are you not going to make it more lucrative for the young people out there who perhaps were even scared of joining Boko Haram, but now they're seeing, oh, okay, so if I go fight and kill a lot of people, then I come back and hand over myself, I can get me a very quick visa to another country out there and go and continue with my life and get myself an education. People must be very careful. So this is what this group is arguing, the argument. Let me just finish this. So in a letter on Sunday by its Deputy Director, Kolawole Oludare Serap, which is the Social Economic Rights and Accountability Project, called upon President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, not to allow the bill to sail through. Serap said the bill proposing foreign education for repentant terrorists should be replaced with one that would ensure reparation for the victims of Boko Haram terrorists. Exactly my point. Accountability. Fine, you have repented. Fine, you've turned into a new leaf. But also remember, you killed innocent people. You have to take responsibility for your actions and accountability. So the group contended that the bill erodes justice and makes a mockery of the suffering of victims and the unspeakable human tragedy, humanitarian crisis, and appalling atrocities committed by Boko Haram, a terrorist group. That is something that is quite outright. That is something that is quite self-explanatory, and why this was very difficult for the senators there to see, or for them to see that this bill was ridiculous from the get-go. I don't know how it even sailed through the first. It sailed through the first reading. I think went through. So now I don't know this week if it will have any new developments. But you cannot. Reparation for the victims is very important. So when you take these people, they have repented. You take them abroad to go study, and yet the victims will eternally be staying here feeling that justice has not been done. Why? What is happening there? Because this goes against, erodes, as this group says, erodes and makes a mockery of the suffering of the victims, which a lot of times we forget about. And that is the same situation in Ambazonia. That is the same situation in we see now in Nigeria, and that is the same situation in South Sudan. You want to pretend to fix something, and yet you refuse to go to the root cause. And also accountability is something that we like sweeping under the rugs, and that's why a lot of bad leadership in Africa, they get away with so much because we'd rather just forget it and just move forward. That is unacceptable. You cannot reward terrorist with an education abroad. I don't know which part of abroad this will be. I don't know which country the Nigerian government is trying to send these Boko Haram fighters. They should tell the country. Which country? Are they being taken to Europe? Are they being taken somewhere in the Middle East? Are they being taken somewhere in Asia? Not so much terrorist activities over there. But where are they taking these ex-Boko Haram fighters? Somebody has to be accountable. Victims must see that justice has been served. They maimed people. I'm a Christian. I believe in forgiveness, but I also believe in accountability. So can they be accountable? Let's not make it look like Boko Haram now is the new stepping stone towards a brighter future. Because if you keep rewarding this bad behavior, if you keep rewarding these murderers with the shiny, wonderful perks, tell me how it will not be attractive for more young men and women to join these terrorist groups, because they know in the long run they're going to benefit. The government will come in with a very good deal that will still propel them to their next level in life, and yet they have maimed, they have killed, they have raped a lot of innocent souls. That is unacceptable. And the fact that this bill had these details, that I'm just shocked to learn now. I just saw that part of they wanted to rehabilitate them, I don't know, teach them what, I didn't get it exactly. And now I see that part of it is to send them abroad for education. You put them at a rehabilitation in Nigeria. You monitor them. You give them the education there. Let them stay there in Nigeria. Let them go back to the communities that they've had. Let them do community service there. Let them reach out. Let them be part of the community. Getting them out of the country, you're not helping anybody. If anything, that abroad, people have to understand which country these people are being transported to or are being taken to. Monday Okorio saying, my sister, may God bless you. Your topics this morning, Happy New Month. Happy New Month to you. Thank you. Happens also to be my birthday month later on this month. John Maluth, Nick Rui, good morning to you. Nick Mari Okwa, you're saying the country called Zoom must fall. Mickey Bank, you're saying we're going home. God bless you. All right, thank you. Nyaleo Dak Duop, you're saying we want real peace. Kir like a 3-year-old boy that changes his mind every minute. I'm telling you, that situation from South Sudan, I think it just wears me out. I'm even tired of just talking about it. But what they should understand is the world is tired. We're not sending any more mediators there in South Sudan. They better get their act together. And if they cannot do that, they don't have the capabilities and the will to do that, then the people of South Sudan themselves will get tired of them and will just remove them out of office. Mr. Kiir must learn to consult. He has to understand that the leadership dynamic, or how it has been set there, is quite different and unique because of other things that come with it. So he cannot just make some executive. He does not enjoy some executive privileges like any other head of state. He has to consult, even in appointments of some of these important portfolios. He does not consult. He gives others without consulting his deputy, and now we are seeing now another stalemate, which I hope does not happen. Because listen, the world is tired. If you can't even agree on how you're going to decide on the ministries, then we just give up. At this point, I don't know if the world can do anything more. Donatas Chidaria saying Biafra must be restored and no power can stop this divine project. John Maluth, you're saying you're watching from Australia. Hey, Donatas Chidaria, did you hear Mr. Nnamdi Kanu has announced a 1 million people's march in Washington, D.C. on the 20th of June? I don't know where you're situated across the globe, but if you find time, please, if you can get there, then I think Mr. Nnamdi Kanu will really appreciate your participation, as I do appreciate your participation in today's show. Thank you so much for your company, and thank you so much for engaging with me. Let's meet here later with another show. My name is Miriam Ogutu. Good afternoon.
Peace must be our goal and our guide. And all that we strive for as a human family, dignity and hope, progress and prosperity, depends on peace. But peace depends on us.